Okay, checking sound. Sorry, folks, we're listening to me complain. everybody, welcome to Tech Hack, also known as StashBlaster Quilts. I'm Maria. I didn't turn my lights on. I'm Maria Spitalnik, and I'm here to help you make more quilts in less time with less stress. Unfortunately, technology is trying to up my stress levels, but we're going to manage just fine tonight. So, if this is your first time here, welcome. I am a professional organizer by trade, but a quilter as well. And so my goal here is to create a space where you're welcome to have conversations in the chat that we'll all talk about. But I always start, because I'm an organizer, with a tip. And this is something I've talked about before. However, I want to talk about it today because it recently came up with a client. I went to go and do an initial assessment this week with a client who is bedbound. She can only be taken to the doctors and things. She needs 24-hour care, etc. And she has moved home. And they wanted me to come and take a look. And so I went, and in talking with the care manager, she told me that the woman had all these places that she wanted her money to go when she passed. But she doesn't have a will. And so this is a particular soapbox of mine because most people never get their legal documents done, and I'm really big on getting them done, so I'm going to explain why. And if you don't have them, I really recommend you get them. But let's go back to this client. I happen to live in a state, Virginia, that is deadly serious about finding heirs. If a case comes to probate, which is what happens after you pass away, and there is no will, it's called dying intestate. And without the will, there's a chart that the state follows in terms of who gets what percentage of your property. A spouse automatically gets it all, but if there's no spouse, how much goes to living parents, your children, your brothers, your sisters, etc. There's a formula. This woman has no family that she knows of. So what an attorney would have to do is go back up her family tree and trace each line until they find someone who can inherit. A lawyer friend of mine calls this the laughing beneficiary, because this is literally somebody died that you'd never met who left you all their money. Because she wants it to go to certain charities, because she wants it to go to certain people, she has got to get either a will or a trust done so that that can happen. One of the problems is, not only is she on hospice, which means they're not trying to cure her anymore, they're just trying to keep her comfortable, but she could pass at any moment, which then puts it right back into the state formula. But there's also a question, as you degrade, of capacity. If you are found to be incapacitated, that means that you no longer can make decisions on your own behalf. Then you can't sign a will. You can't sign powers of attorney. So they've got to get a will done and back to her for signing very quickly. I spoke to them 2 days ago. The attorney was supposed to go out today, talk to the lady, and they're hoping to have it signed by the end of the week. That's a very, very fast turnaround, because that's the only way she will have any control over what happens with her assets when she passes. I had a client who was 93 at the time, I think. And I was talking to her about her legal documents, and she looked at me and she said, "Maria, wills are for old people, and when I get old, I'll get one." And I said to her, "I will be devastated if you are hit by a bus and die tomorrow." And 25-year-olds get hit by buses. She goes, "That's true." I said, I would be more concerned for you if you lived. Now, at first she was shocked and offended. But then I explained to her, if you pass away, there's a formula the state takes care of that. But if you live, somebody has to pay your bills. Not just the hospital bills, but for your apartment. If you, like a different client of mine, is in the hospital for 6 months and nobody pays your bills, when and if you can ever come home, all of your stuff would have months ago been put out on the curb, and somebody else is living in your apartment. So you really need somebody who can pay your bills. And she thought about it for a second. She goes, yeah, you're right. And then I said, secondly, is a medical power of attorney. Well, the first one, I said that the way you fix that is you get a durable power of attorney, which is the ability to handle your funds. And then you have a medical power of attorney. That's somebody who can make your medical decisions for you. Because a hospital administrator's job is to make sure that they're providing quality care, but they also have a bottom line they have to meet. I don't want some hospital administrator trying to decide either, do I keep her because the insurance bills, etc., are rolling in and we can do these 800 procedures to keep her alive at any cost, which will not only drain the insurance company, but will also drain your bank account. Or somebody who says, you know what, we're really overcrowded, I don't see a lot of hope for this person, so we're just going to send them off to an assisted living, or we're just going to let them die and free up a bed. Neither which is good for you. I said, you need to know what you want and have somebody who will make the decisions the way you want them made. For example, there's something called a do not resuscitate, and a lot of people have that. But they can only resuscitate you if you're dead. If they manage to keep you from dying, then they can do anything they want to with you to try to keep you alive. So you need something like a living will. And then, how is that going to be done? And when are the decisions made? So like with Terry Schiavo, they spent decades trying and fighting over whether to take her off life support or not. I said, you know what? You need somebody who will speak for you, who knows what you want, which means you have to tell them, and can make those decisions in the moment. This is not a fun conversation to have with anyone, okay? We had this conversation with our son the day after he turned 18, because we took him to the lawyer to get the powers of attorney. So something happened to him at college, we could make decisions for him, because otherwise he's an adult. Will the hospital listen to the next of kin? Probably, but they don't have to. So this isn't exactly professional organizing that I'm talking about right now. It's not really a tip in that way. But if you want to have control over your life, your death, and your money, please get at least your powers of attorney done. If you have children, you need a will, because that's the only place you can designate a guardian. If you don't, the court generally looks to your family and says, oh, give the kids to the parents, in this case the grandparents, or will say, okay, the nearest living relative is the sister, but they don't know that the sister spends money like water and is high half the time. Okay? So a will is definitely needed to do guardianship. A trust is a different kind of document where your assets get distributed after you pass away in the way that you want, but it's not overseen by the court, and it's not public knowledge like a will is. So there's different things for different people. So you would need to talk to an attorney to decide what you need. But the powers of attorney are something everybody needs. So if nothing else, please consider this, because I was looking at this old woman in a bed who has no friends. Well, she has some friends, but she has no family around. She's getting minimal support. Most of her support is from strangers because she's paying for 24-hour care. It's a really sad and tough position to be in, and I don't want that to happen for any of you. So that's my tip. If you haven't done your legal documents, please do them. Okay, so now we're going to get off the heavy subjects and get into quilting, because quilting is fun, and that's why you're here. Okay, there's another one of you today. Just for amusement's sake, I'm going to tell you about this, because I happen to know this lady, and she lives in Romania, which means it's 2 a.m. where she is. So if she does not watch this live, I am perfectly fine with that. but she knows me from organizing, and so she's also a professional organizer over there. And so I thought it was really sweet. And so this is my longest distance follower to this point, is Romania. So this is very cool. So welcome, Alina. Anyway, so that's that. Quilt updates. Okay, so I have been making these smaller ones I told you about, and I've created the pattern for the background. It is not assembled yet. I have gone through and I figured out all the different sizes, and when I get back from Missouri, I'm going to dive into my scrap bag and pull out as many of the scraps as I can first that haven't been processed, because then I'll just cut them to the right size, and then I will assemble that backing, per se, and then just applique these on. So that quilt is kind of on stasis right now, except that I have gone ahead and I've done the math. How many squares, what sizes, finished, so I know what sizes, raw to cut, etc. The Fish and Birds quilt. I'm almost done with the next stage, but not quite. I was sewing the binding while I was waiting to come on. So, here's my glasses. What I am doing, I've been fighting with my machine too while I was trying to get on, so you might have heard some muttering, and I apologize for that. Okay, let me hook this on. I just had this on the table, which tends to work just fine. But I'll have to take it off for this. Alright, I'm going to switch cameras. Okay. I'm going to turn on another light. This should not blind you. There we go, good. Okay, so when I was doing... Oops. Hold on. This is the battery pack to the mic, which I just had sitting on the table, and it jumped, so I will attach it to my shirt like you're supposed to. That I was just too lazy to do. Okay, I'm coming, I promise. You'll have something to look at in a second. Okay. So, when I did this quilt top, if you remember, I took little stay stitches at each of the corners of the hexagons to keep the pieces together. Okay, hold on, let me move this up a little bit more like this. Okay. So like right here, I had a little stay stitch, and so my thread just ran across that way. I have now trimmed this up, and so now what I'm doing is this little whip stitch. Now, I don't do this for every quilt, but the reason I did it here, hopefully you can see it. I'm trying to get it so it focuses in the right spot. There it is to make sure that as I'm sewing, these edges don't lift on me. Okay? So I'm just doing this quick little stitch all the way around, just to make it so I don't have to worry when it's time to put the binding on. I have chosen my binding. I was just starting to stitch it when this started. And I have about... Oh, let me see if I can find my end here. I've gotten most of the way around the quilt. I only have a little ways to go. Come on. I've got a needle jammed in here, so that's why I'm being really careful while I'm manipulating it, trying to find my needle. Alright. Okay. I'm just going by where I stay stitched first, because it's easier to do it that way. And I'm trying to find my end. I know I didn't finish. Good golly, Miss Molly. You know I'm going to find the needle in the hardest way possible. I know I was doing one of the long sides. I think I keep looking at the same edge 3 different times. There we go. Here's an unfinished edge. Okay. Oh, I guess I took the needle out. That was smart of me. So I basically have a 1.5 yards left. So from here to there. That's all I have left to whip stitch. And once that's done, then we'll be good to go. Of course, I have to sew the binding and press it open, etc., etc. But So that's the Fish and Birds Quilts progress. So by the time I'm on next time, the binding should be on, and I'm not taking this to Missouri. I don't want anything to happen to it in the car. So the binding will be on, at least the front edge, even if I'm not done stitching it down. Because next time I'm going to be calling from Missouri. I'm not going to have the quilt with me, but we'll do that the following time. Okay? So that's that. The geometric quilt. This one, the geometric hexagon quilt. Actually, let me do this. I'm going to do this because this should give you a better view. There we go. Oh, there it is. At this point, I am just sewing pairs together. So, to be honest with you, I cheated a little bit. Let me move this up. And so I took my needles that had thread on them, and I did those colors first. So I had some needles that had red on them, so I did red ones. And then I had some that had blue on them, so I did some of the double blues, and then the purples. And now I'm doing the white with anythings. Each one of these, it's an odd number on the left, and then the next even number next to it. So that way I'm sure that I'm getting pairs. Now, when I sewed the hexagons for the Fish and Birds quilt, if you remember, I did the hexagons in triads. Now I'm doing them in pairs because I'm going to do pairs and then the lower pair and then make them into quads and go across that way. Because there's either 15 or 16, depending on the row, across. It was just nicer to not have an extra. I'd rather be short one, if that makes sense. So that's why I'm doing it this way. Plus this way you'll get to see both constructions and how they come out. So right now it's kind of a jumble, but they're all numbered, and as always, lettered and numbered, so that it'll be easy to assemble later. Right now the rest of them are just sitting in a box next to my chair in numerical order. They're on edge, so I could see where there was a white one and something else, and so I pulled them out that way. I clipped them with binder clips, and so they're just sitting there waiting to be sewn. So that's what's going on with that. Oh, one thing that I forgot to mention. Sorry, let's backtrack to the Fish and Birds quilt. On that one, what I'm going to do is, once the binding and everything is done, I'm going to use the binder clips and I'm going to clip them all the way around the quilt. Now there's a couple reasons for that. When I'm traveling, I don't do that because they'll start to get in my way. But I clip them all the way around when I can because I want to make sure that the seams on my binding don't wind up in the corner if I can avoid it. I can't tell you how many times I've wound up with a seam that's like 1/4 of an inch away from the corner, and it just makes everything harder to manipulate. So by playing with the placement first on the 4 corners, I can make sure that that's not going to happen to me again. I will even fold it like I would fold it for the second part of the seam. You know how you fold it up and then fold it back? When I do that, I'll clip that too, so that I'm sure that those seams are going to end up where they're supposed to. So that's something that I am going to take care of before I see you again, so I want to make sure I told you about that. Okay. Next. Oh, another quilt. This is just the top is done, but this is a summer challenge that one of my quilting groups did. But my top is done. This is half of it. So you can see it here. I think it's going to look really cute when it's finished. I added an extra row to it. So it's going to be rectangular rather than square. But I think this is a really cute pattern that they found somewhere, and then all of us were doing it. Nope. Stick back up there. I didn't put any pins in these, so that's why they're falling. Because you don't really need to with flannel, but it helps sometimes. This is such a small space that the back of my chair keeps hitting them too and knocking them to the ground. But hopefully you can see the general pattern here. So I like it. I like it quite a bit, actually. So this was done by randomly pulling squares. I had the white. I pulled out all my white 2.5-inch squares, and then I just randomly pulled other colors and I sewed them all together into 9 patches and then strips of 4. Actually, not 9 patches, 16 patches. So I did 4 patches, and then I put the 4 patches together in a 4-patch, and then strips of 4 that had a white strip in between, and then 9 patches where they all intersect, and it all worked out fine. So I'm pretty happy. Is it perfect? No. I was ironing it today and I saw 2 squares, 2 places where squares just overlapped a little bit. It's fine. Okay, I'm gonna just let them go. If one of you sees it live and you want to find them, you're welcome to play the silly game. But that's what it is. But anyway, all in all, it has been a relatively productive week. It has been very productive with my writing. I've been very happy about that. Yeah, all in all, it's been good. Today's been a bad tech day, like I was saying. And it's also been one of these days where butting has happened a lot. So, or can you give me a minute kind of a thing? So, for example, I was going to come up here at 6:30. I was pulling out that stay stitching along the last side of the fish and birds quilt. And I was like a minute and a half, 2 minutes late. And then my husband said, "Oh, I need you for just a minute." So then he took some time. And then I was about to come upstairs and he goes, "Oh, wait a second. I need your help." Okay, what? I'm halfway up the stairs. And so he goes, "Oh, the books just arrived." Okay, well, we need to bring them in. And now in my head, I'm sitting there going, we could do it after, but okay, fine. So the books for Missouri showed up. So then we had to haul them in. So I came up here just in time to start this at 6:45. And then I'm getting things set up. I did my mic check later. I usually try to do all of that before that 15 minutes in advance. I had to put my sewing machine up because I had my writing set up. And then for some reason, my machine does not like its walking foot today. As soon as I put in the walking foot, the needle jams on the bobbin case down below. Now, I've used the walking foot on this thing, not the last time I sewed, but the time before. So it's not like it's a new walking foot. There's nothing weird going on here, but nope, it wouldn't do it. So I took it off, I redid everything, I put it back on. Nope, still won't do it. Put on my regular foot, it's fine. So I don't know what's going on with it. I'm just not sure what's going on with it. So I think I may have to ask my repairman, is this something that I need to bring it in to be fixed? Does it sound like an adjustment? What do you think this is? But other than that, I'm not sure. So then my next question is, I'm not mid-quilting or piecing, so changing the machine doesn't matter as much. This question actually came up on a chat, during a chat on email earlier today about changing sewing machines mid-stride. I have found personally, if at all possible, I do not change machines. I will put a project aside till I get the machine repaired, if necessary, but I don't tend to switch machines. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is your seam allowance is different from machine to machine to machine. And yes, we all strive for the perfect 1/4 inch. We don't all get there, let's be honest. So whatever it is you're using, use it, but it will not be the same on the next machine. But that's not the only thing. Tension settings are different. The way it feeds is different. Your stitch lengths are different. And unless you are dedicated to one brand, you're going to have some differences. And all of those things can make a difference in how the quilt comes out, and particularly quilting comes out. So, it's one of those things that if I have a choice, I don't change. However, for doing things like sewing binding or putting it on the quilt, Does it really matter, the machine? No. No. You can switch to a different machine for a different process. So, for example, if I pieced on my Janome, but then it, for some reason, wasn't up to the quilting and I wanted to switch to a different machine for quilting, as long as I did all that quilting on that machine, it's going to come out even. Each process, at the least, needs to be done on the one machine for consistency if you can do it. Consistency isn't always possible in real life or in quilting. So, for example, my nails, when you saw them up close, they look horrible because I haven't had a chance to get to the nail salon and get them replaced. It's just how it's going to be. They'll look great for Missouri, so because I'm going next week. But, sometimes things don't look the way they're supposed to. And with changing quilting machines, sometimes you can tell, nope, it doesn't look the way it's supposed to. Now, sometimes it's user error. When I was sewing that orange fish I was telling you about, yep, it had been a while since I had done those scales. And you can tell. You can definitely tell because I was just getting good at it. And then the machine had problems, and then I had to be on the trips for more than a month. Everything else. So I got back into it. That was the project I had ready to go, so I started it. Not my best choice. So, even sometimes the same machine, it's going to be user error. Just accept it. It's life. I could go back into that orange fish, tear out all my quilting and redo it. Yes, I could. I could tear this whole machine apart tonight and try to figure out what's going on with that foot. I could. Not gonna. There's a lot of choices that we get to make in terms of our timing. In this particular case, my question is going to be to myself, do I simply sew the binding on with the regular foot, which I have done 1,000,000 times instead of the walking foot. It's easier with the walking foot, but I can certainly do it without. I could even do it with the feed dogs down so that I'm controlling the stitch length but also the tension on the top, so there isn't that pressure down and the pressure forward from the feed dogs. I could do it that way. That takes a very steady hand and a good day to have that work out right. I'm just telling you that right now. But it's doable, particularly if I have clipped it enough. In case you don't know what binder clips are, this is a small version of one. Let me put this up here. Okay? This is a little bit smaller than I generally use. I usually use the 1/4" binder clips. Actually, here, I'll get them and show them to you. Let me move these quilts out of the way. Just around back here. So I have what are called small binder clips, and then I have micro binder clips. Actually, the micros are the 1/4". I apologize. Okay. Ouch. So now I'm going to move the camera 3 around before I turn it on, so that hopefully I don't make anybody's car sick. Okay, so these are binder clips. Now, you can find them in boxes like this at any any office supply store. These are just ones I haven't undone yet. These are the ones I use the most for actual quilt binding. These are used mostly by people in offices, and people forget you can use them lots of other ways. So if you look here, this is about 3/4 inch across like that. Hopefully you can see that. This is the perfect size for quilt binding for me. They also make quilters clips that do the same thing. You can get them either with these little handles on them, or they make them without, and then there's a basically it looks like a handle. It's not a handle. How do I explain this? It's kind of like holding a knife handle in that it's an oblong piece, and you load the clips in the back, and then you can slide a lever and it will open up the end of the binder clip, and then you shove it on, and then it tightens back down. Okay? And so that will hold it in place, and then when you get there you just pull it off. I don't like that for quilting because I don't want to be pulling, especially a pieced edge, off. Even with the binding on at that point, I'm always worried I'm going to snag something or I'm going to rip when I pull that off. So in order to avoid that, with these, all you need to do is squeeze and it opens. Okay? And then you put your quilt in and you let it go and it'll be nice and tight again. So the reason I like these, let me get the fish and birds because it's right here. The smaller ones do work, but given the thickness of the quilt, the fact that you're going to have 8 layers, no, you're going to have 6 layers of additional fabric from the binding itself through it, it gives a nice strong grab without having to be jammed on and off. The smaller binder clips, particularly when you have the intersections, in this particular case, all the seams on the top and the quilting and everything else all coming into a spot, I don't want to have to jam that little clip on. I can use these binder clips on any type of quilt that I'm doing and know that it's going to fit and it's not going to cause any damage. So what I'll do is I'll take these, I'll open them up, I'll put them on the quilt. I'm trying to do this so you can see it, so I'm trying to put it over my face, which isn't necessarily the best look. Alright, let's switch cameras again. It might be easier to see here. Okay, so I will take the binder clip, I will open it, I put the quilt in, and then I will fold these back down over the quilt. If you leave them sticking out like this, they're going to snag on everything and they're going to drive you nutso. Okay? So when you flop them down, they'll be perfectly fine, they'll be out of the way, and you'll have a nice clean edge here. Another advantage to these over pins is you're not going to poke yourself on this. You can grab this from any direction and it's not going into your skin. When I have pinned with pins, I have done that. Safety pins get to be really hard on the hands after a while. This is quick, easy, simple, and cheap. And they're in your office supplies, not in your quilter supplies. So I probably have, I'd say about 1,000 here. Why do I have so many? I've been asked that before too. It is not uncommon for me to have at least 3, and I've had as many as 8 quilts where I'm either getting ready to sew on the binding, so I'm clipping them down pre-sewing, or I've sewn the binding on and then I roll it around and then I clip it again, where they're stacked up and ready to be hand sewn. Because sometimes I have lots of time to hand sew and I can't get to my machine. That's what happened with all those trips I was on. And sometimes I have almost no time to hand sew, and whatever time I have, I've dedicated to the machine. So I wind up with a backlog. And then I just sit there and I will sew down binding for 3 days or whatever it takes, you know, over a weekend during a movie marathon or something. So I bought enough, and you can see I haven't even opened them all. But all the ones that were loose, I have been using all at the same time. I've had, I think, as many as 6 quilts that I've had the clips on at one time. And what's nice is as long as you don't live in a high humidity area, they're not going to rust, they're not going to leave any marks on the quilt, and it doesn't matter if they sit on there for a month. It just doesn't matter. So that's why I do this. Now, if you have binder clips that are at all rusty, do not use them in any way anywhere near your quilt. And that's not just the black part, but also the silver part. Especially if you're going to put the silver back up against the quilt like this. Because that will transfer rust to your quilt and it will stain. So you have to make sure that these are good and clean if you're going to use ones that have been used in an office, or if you live in a high humidity area where they could start to rust. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're doing this. But binder clips are my favorite ways to keep all the layers together and to make it easy to do the job. So that's what's going on with that. Now, the 2024 quilt. I have gotten responses from a couple of you. Thank you. Um, if you go to StashBlasterQuilts.com, the website, not the email, but StashBlasterQuilts.com, under the quilting, the annual quilts, there is a 2020, blah, blah, blah. Let's try this in English. There is a 2024 folder. In that folder is a survey. You can also go to the community tab here on YouTube, and there's under the community, there's a link to the same survey. And so if you answer the questions in the survey, I'll be able to use those answers to make the final decisions on next year's quilt. So there's only been 2 of you so far. I know there's at least 3 more of you that tend to email me on this kind of thing. So please go ahead and do that. Do the survey, excuse me. And then I'm going to make the plans for the 2024 quilt based on the answers that I get. The survey will be active till the end of the month. So if you don't get to it before the next live stream, hopefully that will remind you. And then at the end of the month, I'm going to use December to be designing the quilt so that I can tell you, okay, this is what we're going to be doing. So please keep that in mind, and then we'll move forward with it starting the first Wednesday of the month in January. That's when we're going to talk about the design. So I ask a bunch of other weird questions, like do you want a studio tour, that kind of stuff as well in the survey. And that will happen sometime in the next year if that's something that people want to see. I am not promising to do it right away because my son is moving out on Monday. And so I'm going to be making a whole bunch of changes. So, for example, I have quilting books in this room and in my guest room. And so what I'm probably going to do in his room is put all of the library in there, including the personal books, the fiction, the nonfiction, all of that stuff will probably go into that room. And so that means that'll clear up space in here. And so there's a bunch of stuff that I'm going to be moving around. So if I did a studio tour today, it will be different when in just a few months. So once I get settled, I tend to stay that way for a while. I also need the shelving I have on this side is starting to go from this to this. I did not apparently attach the standards properly. So since I will have room next door now, once he's gone, I'm going to take everything off of these shelves, put those over there. I'm going to empty my closet and put up new standards in both locations and then refill them. So that's going to be in flux for a while too. So that's why I'm just letting you know that it's not going to happen. Even if you vote for it, it's not happening right away. But once everything is done, I'll give you the tour of both rooms and you can kind of see, because some things will be here and some things will be over there. So I've given you the updates on some of this stuff. I'm missing something. There's something else I was going to do, and I apologize that I am blanking at the moment. I'll remember what it is. But anyway, so I've got to figure out what's going on with the machine. I do have a bunch of machines. I was in a class once, and they asked how many sewing machines did we have. And so, how many have 1? Every hand goes up. How many have 2? Most hands went up. 3, most hands went up. And as we're going through the thing, I'm thinking about it. And if you count every machine, including the children's machines I think I have 13. Most of which never get used, to be honest with you. I have 3 featherweights I'm not using. So I think that one of the things I'm probably going to do over the next year or so, I mean, all the machines within the last 2 years have been cleaned, oiled, and everything. I did all of that. But I think that I may be selling some of those featherweights, if not all of them. I'm probably going to get down to about 3 or 4 machines. I do not have an embroidery machine. I do not have a serger. I do not have a quilting machine. These are all standard sewing, basic home deck kind of sewing machines. But I've been gifted them. I've inherited them. I bought the Janome that I use all the time from a fellow quilter years ago because I wanted the ability to have different stitch lengths and styles and things. I can't tell you how exciting it was to have a machine that did something other than a straight stitch or a zigzag. My fancy machine had a zigzag. The the rest of them are all straight stitch machines, which has a benefit. A simple straight stitch machine that's older is a workhorse. It can do the job practically anywhere, anytime, any material. Dare it, it'll do it. One of my machines is a universal, is the name of it. It comes with the base on it, and then the hard plastic cover that goes on and then clamps down. That machine was the one that my mother had in college, and Universal was bought by somebody else, and then it was bought by White, and then it was bought by somebody else. So it's at least 3 generations from existing as a machine company. And it weighs 800 pounds, it seems like, but I can count on that machine that if I need to do something, it'll do it. And then I was at a show of some kind, I don't remember, with my husband, and they were demonstrating sewing machines, and this one was a White, and they were sewing down wooden rulers to show how strong the needle and the motor was, which was super cool. And since, of course, my mom still had her machine at the time, he bought me that one. And so I used that one for a long time. That was my fancy one because it has 3 different sizes of zigzags. It's all on one little lever that you go up and down. Your straight stitch, your large, your medium, and your small straight stitch. And then the zigzags, the small, the medium, and the large zigzag. So you could do the large ones, and then a small one, and then a large one, and then work your way back up, and then a small one, and then a large one, and you had a buttonhole. Ooh. I look at these things now, and I've got a friend whose machine, she'll just say, yeah, buttonhole, this kind of buttonhole, and then she just plops down her needle, and she watches, and the machine just moves it up and down, and side to side, and does all of this stuff. Because she's told it how long, etc. And it's good to go. And I just remember being entranced by the idea that I could do my own buttonhole without having to do it by hand on this amazing machine. And then I think back that it's not a surprise. Scott and I were dating at the time, and we weren't engaged, so that was at least 32 years ago. So it's probably closer to 35. Yeah, it's not a surprise that it wasn't very advanced back then. But whenever I go to the quilt store and I see these machines where the throat is like this big, and it's got this huge deck and all of this stuff, and sometimes I get machine envy. I admit it. If Brother or Janome or any of them, Bernina would be really wild if it did that, but if any of them said, hey Maria, we have this quilting sewing machine that we would love to have you test drive for us, and you get to keep it when you're done, just say something about it on your oh, would I ever take that in a hot minute. Yes, you're a good work machine, yes. I don't want to ever piss off my sewing machines. I have enough trouble with that. But I don't anticipate ever having all of that. Might I someday get a sit-down quilting machine, you know, like like a 16, 21-inch deep-throated quilting machine? Maybe. Do I really lust after the king-size 3-roller long arm quilting, the 24-inch deep throat machine with the computer to do? Oh yeah, I'm human, I admit it. Do I have the space for one of those? No. Even with Jonathan's room empty, I don't think it would fit. And realistically, if I'm quilting it, I can probably do it on my domestic just fine. Or if I get a sit down, it'll be just fine. But I do love the idea, because I'm not into the quilting part of it myself, of being able to set an overall design and let it loose. Oh, that just sounds wonderful. It really does. But I know who I am, and that's one of those things. So yeah, I don't anticipate that happening anytime. But the sit down might, because that one, it comes with a table that's about the size of my desk table here, and that would be a lot easier than just doing it on the domestic, because it's automatically at the right height for the needle and everything. And it's bigger spools and bobbins and things, so it's easier to, it's fewer bobbin changes and all that. I might consider that, because it's basically a oversized domestic machine in terms of how it works. I also like the idea that it's rotated to 90 degrees, so you can see more of what you're doing when you do it. And so, yeah, that may be in my future. But if so, it's going to be a while. Saving up money for something like that is going to take a while. So, anyway, that's all. Dreams and fantasies. I'm letting you into my world. Anyway, so I don't even remember where I started that from, and I apologize. I'm just in a wandering mood today. I was talking about the tech and the machines and all that, yeah. So, I am the type of person who is usually recommending to people, you have the thing, do you really need another one? This is where real life and quilting and other related hobbies can diverge. It can take a long time to get a sewing machine repaired. It doesn't usually here, but it can. A friend of mine had a special one, I think it was a Husqvarna, and they actually had to send to its original company to get a part. And it took her, I think, 3 months before she got her machine back. If your sewing machine is your therapist, and admit it, for some of us it is, having a backup, one of those work dog kinds of machines, is a good idea. I have no problem saying to somebody, yeah, having a backup sewing machine, having a backup whatever, as long as it's not something super expensive like the long arm concept. Having an acceptable backup is fine. Does it need to be top of the line in order to be an acceptable backup? No. Okay? That's why I'm saying a workhorse machine. For me, straight stitch only, there's a lot that I can do with that. It may not take me further on the projects I'm currently working on. If I was doing something where I was using fancy stitches, or if I was doing something where I definitely don't want to change the machine midway, that's fine. There's a lot I cannot do. There is, on those machines over there, there's no such thing as a walking foot that fits them. And there is no drop the feed dogs, and there's no darning feet. There's nothing for those machines that I have. Okay? So, I can't do the same projects. But that doesn't mean that I can't feed my soul with quilting with one of those machines. It may just mean it's a different project. One of the things that I'm thinking about doing over in Jonathan's room is actually setting out all of my projects individually, because right now they're in a rolling cart and on my wall up there. Setting out all of them on shelving individually to make them easier to see. This does somewhat terrify me because I have a lot. But that will, when I have them out, I will have that better opportunity for, I only have this amount of time. What can I accomplish in that amount of time and on which project? I have been doing a one old project for one new project kind of a thing, which does mean I'm getting a lot of old projects done, because I have not only things like the mystery quilt, which was a new project, even though I did two of them. By the way, just so you know, if you ever want to do this, the camera reverses the image, so when I do this, it's on the, it looks like it's the opposite hand pointing to the side, so everything's backwards. So just so that you know that sometimes I get confused when I'm pointing at stuff, because this over here is on the left of the screen that I'm watching on, like it is for you, but it's on my right behind me, and it's my right hand that's moving, although it looks like it's on the left. It's just one of those things. So these were a new project, but these flowers here are an old project. The background wasn't. I was originally going to keep making these until I did a full grandmother's garden with it, grandmother's flower garden, but I've decided to do something different. I've changed the project, but this is still an old project. I have more hexies up there for another flower garden. I haven't decided what I'm doing with that yet. I will probably do it as a flower garden, but it might be a weird flower garden. I don't know. I haven't decided yet for that. Partially because I got on a hexie making kick, and I was just making them, and then I realized that since I didn't have a plan, and I was just doing it for the fun of making hexies, just like for a while I was making fabric flowers, and I still have a bag of them over there that have to be put into a project. I made thousands of them. Every scrap of fabric I found, I turned into flowers. And while it was a lot of fun, I didn't have a use for them, so they've just been sitting around. I have done some things. For example, I did a Christmas tree using some of the flowers, like stars. I did a Day of the Dead quilt shirt. I had this black shirt with a square collar, and I put the fabric flowers all the way around. I was actually speaking at a convention, and it was in Texas over Halloween. And so they had a Halloween party, and although Day of the Dead is technically the day afterwards, I did the full face makeup. I did a really good job, actually. I kind of surprised myself. And then I had a hat with little white skull beads that dangled all the way around. And I had an antique bracelet that had silver charms that did things. So like there was a carriage and the wheels turned. There was a fish that was jointed so you could swim it. There was a bell that rang. There's a bunch of those. And so I got all dressed up and I did that. I have the pictures of that somewhere. If you want to see that, drop a note, either at mail at StashBlaster Quilts or in the chat, or send me a comment. I will see if I can dig up that picture and show it to you guys. I think I actually did a really good job. And so that was really cool. And so I used some of the flowers for that. But I still have a bunch of them. I've made... I took a piece of foam. It was a ring. And I put them in there. You can put a candle in the middle. Like I said, there's a ton of different things you can do with them. But I still have a bunch left. So... in fact, I still have... I bought the tools to make them, and I still have a bunch of those too. I should probably offer them up at a class or something for sale, because those are very cool, and they're super easy, and you can just make flowers by the thousands, and I know you can, because I have. In fact, I gave 1,000 flowers twice to each of the guilds that I belong to. I gave 1,000 each flowers for the annual auctions that we had at the time. This is pre-COVID. And they sold pretty well. And they're, like I said, they're super easy to do, and I just went nuts with it. But that was a lot of fun. But it's a project. Something needs to be done with it. I have tons of embellishments, and the flowers could qualify as an embellishment. They do, that's why they're over in that section. But they shouldn't just sit there forever. So I've got to come up with some interesting ideas. So I'm going to have to do that. But that's why I'm thinking I may just put them all out so that they're all together. I can see them all anytime and just pull one, bring it in here, work on it, and then put it back in its own spot, which will make it easier than when I have a half a dozen things around the room that I'm working on that I need to keep track of all the different parts and stuff. If they all go back into a bag and over to that room over there, then when I have the time, I can just work on that. But between the books, the speaking I've been doing, the custom quilting custom quilt tops I've been doing, things like that. I haven't gotten very far on my old list yet, but I'm working on it. So you guys will get to see some of that as it goes by. That's that. I think that's about it. We're actually about 4 minutes in. Oh, yeah. So, this morning, I have a wall clock over my door. And it's been running about 4 minutes fast. So this morning, I took it down. I set the time to match the computer. Because I said to myself, I use the computer for timing things like the live streams, etc., but I look at that clock to see how much time is left because it's easier to see it visually than to do the math. Okay? Especially if I don't have my glasses on, I can't hardly see that. That's just a bunch of blurry things. So now it's 2 minutes late. It's like I cannot win. High tech, low tech, doesn't matter. I am not winning today. So, it is what it is. Anyway, according to the computer, there's only 3 minutes left. So I'd like to go ahead and wrap up. Just a quick reminder, I will be in Missouri for our next meeting this is the first Wednesday of the month, sorry. In 2 weeks, I will be in Missouri. So I am going to attempt to do this from there. If it doesn't work, I'll apologize for that now, but I will definitely be back for the next one, the first Wednesday in December. But I will do my best to come to you live and in person from Missouri. Other than that, I think that's all that's going on in terms of me going anywhere until maybe March, but I don't think we're looking at anything until the summer. So hopefully it all works out. But that's what's going on. So if you don't hear from me, if I don't come on, that's why. If this is your first time here and you've stuck it out till now, great, good for you, thank you. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell if you want to know when this is coming on. I do start about 15 minutes in advance, so you get the notification. You can go get yourself something to drink, get settled and relax while you watch this silly shenanigans that I put on here. And then I try to start right on time and end right on time. So, again, those of you who are watching, thank you. Those of you who watch it at a later time, which is most of you, thank you for doing that as well. Please continue to do so. If you know somebody who might enjoy this, please let them know. I don't anticipate this ever being huge with millions of people who watch or anything. I'm not a Bernadette Banner. I'm not a Missouri Quilts or anything like that. I'm nothing big like that. But it'd be really fun if we could get a whole bunch of people on here to talk and interact while we're doing this. If you have any questions, you can either leave a comment or you can email me and I will answer them either directly if it's something that I think is too personal or too specific to answer here, or I'll answer it here if I think it's of more general interest. today's tip about the paperwork I am serious about, so please consider it. I can't tell you how sad it is when I'm dealing with an estate that's being dealt with by some attorney who never met the family because the court had to appoint somebody. It's much better when you know what's going on. So thank you, everybody, and I will see you hopefully in a couple of weeks. All right? Have a great one. Bye-bye.